Mr. President, we're in the middle of a very protracted conversation about tax reform. This conversation started in January. I've heard people say it's been rushed through at the end. It started in January. We're starting into month 12 of this process. Hearings in the House, hearings in the Senate, different drafts coming out, shot down, start all over again, come back and forth. Now starting our 12th month of going through this process. As we get close to the end, I want to be able to outline a few things that we're actually working on to be able to set back to this body and to the American people what's actually happening here. The focus of this from the beginning, from the very start of it, was two simple things. How can we reduce the rates for individuals so they can keep more of their own money, then spend their own money, which stimulates the economy? The second aspect was, how can we simplify this system? I can tell you there's a lot of back and forth on the final details of it, but those two things are very clear. This dramatically simplifies the tax structure that we have, and it reduces rates for people so that people have more of their own money to be able to spend. Businesses have more of their own money to be able to invest in their business, to be able to pay the workers more, be able to buy more equipment, to be able to expand their business. That helps everybody in the economy. Whether you save your money or whether you spend your money, you're able to keep your own money. So here's what this means for hardworking Americans, and in particular in my state, hardworking Oklahomans. Every bracket gets a tax deduction. In fact, the Tax Foundation, as they're studying the Senate plan going state by state, they've looked at the middle income family in Oklahoma, and the Tax Foundation has stated that the middle income family in Oklahoma will have an increase in their take-home pay of $2,200 over the next year. And people will see it in their own paycheck from what is not being withheld anymore because they're able to keep more of their own money. The Senate plan doubles the standard deduction. So a single adult working will have the first $12,000 of their money is not taxed at all. For a married couple, that's $24,000 of their income is not taxed at all. We also double the child tax credit to $2,000, directly to be able to protect the people that need the help the most. What does that look like for us? Well, you take an Oklahoma family of four. That family with all the incomes all put together with two working parents that are there, that typical family of four in my state makes about $73,000, combining all of their incomes together. That family of four with $73,000 of total income for the family will see a cut in their tax bill, $2,200 next year. They pay typically about $3,600 in federal taxes. Next year, they'd pay $1,500 in federal taxes. It's a pretty dramatic shift for them. Let's take a teacher in Oklahoma. Teacher's been teaching a couple of years, single mom, couple of kids, $41,000 in total income, trying to be able to make ends meet. That single mom with a couple of kids will see a tax reduction of $1,400 for her. That's incredibly significant to her in just day-to-day life. I can assure you, every Oklahoman would be glad to be able to see an extra $100 in their paycheck or $150 in their paycheck every single month. That buys a lot of groceries, and that sure does make a lot of help. This is a process that really does affect real people, and it's been lost in all of the conversation. And it's been interesting to me to just be able to hear the debate and all the noise on it. I'm hearing things that I'm calling tax myths of this bill. The most common one on that is it's actually going to increase taxes on those that are in poverty. And so people that are out there saying, oh my goodness, this is going to increase taxes for those individuals. It does not. It actually does exactly the opposite, not only by reducing rates, by increasing the standard deduction, by increasing the child tax credit. It helps the people that need help the most. I've also heard individuals out there in the media saying this is going to hurt people because the individual mandate, something unrelated to tax policy entirely, has been snuck into the tax bill. Well, the individual mandate on the Affordable Care Act is a tax policy that was actually added to a health care bill. So this is a tax bill that's dealing with the tax aspects that was snuck into the original Obamacare health care bill. How does that work? Well, the individual mandate says if you don't buy the insurance that's approved by the folks in Washington, D.C., then you get an extra tax on you. Where does that tax go? Well, in Oklahoma, 81% of the people that pay that extra tax make $50,000 or less. That extra Obamacare tax, that penalty that was put on there was targeted directly at the middle class. and the middle class in Oklahoma pays that fine. 81% of the fine that's paid is paid by people making $50,000 or less in my state. We want to see that tax rate go down for those individuals, and we want to allow people to be able to have that choice. That's a significant change for those individuals that not only are trying to make ends meet, they don't want to see one more tax laid on top of them. Here's another myth that I've heard. People talk about, well, the tax cuts for the individuals aren't permanent. Well, may I remind everyone that the tax changes for the individuals that were made by the Bush administration had the exact same effect. They had a 10-year lifespan. As we went out to the end of that 10-year lifespan, they were then renewed. This is the same type of experience, where this individual taxes are put in place. A future Congress will go back and evaluate, are all these tax rates correct? Is this the right formula that should be in place? And be able to evaluate at that time, just like we did in 2011 when those tax rates were made permanent, to be able to look at it again, give them that future window and to be able to evaluate, is this the right direction? There's been also an interesting one that I've heard several times from people, saying that this will hurt teachers and it will hurt schools. What's interesting to me, I even heard someone this past weekend specifically say the Senate bill takes away classroom expenses from teachers. The ironic part about that is the Senate bill actually doubles the deductibility for teachers in classroom expenses. The lie that's out there is the Senate bill takes it away. The truth, if you read the bill, is it actually doubles it. So the teachers have twice as much as they can deduct. Teachers make a very limited salary already. Last thing we need to be able to do is to be able to hurt teachers as they're trying to take care of the kids in their own classes. So this doubles the deductibility for those teachers for classroom expenses. It also puts in place an extension of the 529. Many parents set aside a little bit of money every month to be able to go towards their child's college education. This would allow that to also be used for education that they choose to have those expenses, kindergarten through 12th grade as well as college. Increases that opportunity. The House bill did have a portion in their bill about student loan interest and tuition waiver for graduate students. The Senate actually does not have those two areas, protecting graduate students in their tuition waiver expenses. I think that's important. There's also been a great myth that's out there that Republicans are cutting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid with this bill. Can I tell you, there is nothing in this bill about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. We are not trying to damage or change any of those programs. In fact, there was one of the hearings that came up in it just last month where JCT, Joint Committee on Tax, was asked that question directly, and they affirmed that there's nothing in this bill that's trying to change those policies. That's just a myth that's sitting out there. What we need is a healthy, growing economy. Our economy's been flat for the last 8 years, growing at around 2%. Historically, the United States economy since World War II has grown at about 3%. Now, that little 1 percentage point change may not be a big deal, but that's a lot of jobs across the country, that's increased wages across the country, that's increased opportunity. I feel sorry for college graduates that graduated in the past several years because they're trying to land a job into this economy and finding out how difficult it is to be able to get a job in this economy, and they wonder, has it always been like that? It has not. If you go back just a decade or 2 decades ago, people were graduating out of college and landing into great jobs because the economy was growing faster. If we don't do something to get this economy growing faster again, we will continue to have limited opportunities for all Americans, and people's paychecks will continue to be flat yet another decade. This is a way to nudge the economy, to say, let's get it back going again. Quite frankly, my Democratic colleagues 8 years ago passed $1 trillion stimulus package and said that's what would nudge the economy, and the economy didn't budge at all. This is an opportunity to come back and say, let's actually do this right. Not having the government spend your money, but allow you to keep more of your money and allow the free market just from people spending, buying, and saving to be able to watch that lift the economy. That lift makes a tremendous difference. One last interesting conversation. There's been a lot of folks talked about deficit or debt effects in this bill. To say this bill could be up to $1 trillion in addition to the deficit. Well, this is typical Washington speak and the challenge of serving here in Washington. There are 130 economists that look at this, all turn in reports. Everybody has a different outlook. Economists study hard, they look at the numbers, they run their models, but everyone is guessing, and I get that. They're educated guesses, but they're all guessing. It's the responsibility of us here in this chamber to be able to look at their models, to look at the study, and to be able to determine, does this work? For instance, JCT. JCT, in their study of it, said that there'll be about $500 billion in deficit because of this bill. But what they didn't take into account when you look at their actual numbers is any real increase in international funding, any increase in our American businesses that do business here in America and across the ocean. That's not really taken into account in theirs. They also don't look at tremendous swaths of the economy because they don't have that in their model. The focus of this is when you look at the studies and you ask the questions, they've all got very conservative estimates, as they should as economists. But if our economy even goes up to maybe 2.5%, still half a percentage point what's typical for us, we're far in the black. I understand it's always a risk. My Democratic colleagues took a risk 8 years ago when they spent almost $1 trillion in the stimulus package saying, I hope this works, and it did not. I understand it's a risk, but I think it's an appropriate risk to be able to say, let's allow Americans to keep more of their own money to invest in this economy on the risk that we grow the economy 0.2% more to be able to break even. I think the American economy can grow much faster than that. She has for decades, up until the last decade. Let's get us back to our old normal and allow that to be our new normal. There's a lot of questions on tax policy, rightfully so. It's important to all of us. Let's get it right, but let's keep moving. Over the next couple of weeks, this body, along with members of the House, will do a conference committee. It's a back and forth about how do we resolve the differences between the House bill and the Senate bill. When that's done, it'll have to pass the House and it'll pass the Senate, and then go to the President's desk. And in the days ahead, Americans will see the changes in their own paycheck as they see the rates go down and people able to keep more of their own money. Understanding that the median family, their rates are set to go down by 60% in this bill. It's a tremendous benefit to them, and I think it's one that we shouldn't miss as that opportunity. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.